Hey, my lovely friends. Hope you're keeping well. Today, we're learning more advanced vocabulary. If you want to check out the spelling of the words, please go to the description. I'll also include more example sentences. Hope you enjoy this one.
um, time travel is what historians do, but this is a short journey. And let's remind ourselves of the things that were said in the first 100 days of Joe Biden's administration. The adults were in the room. Alliances mattered again.
Some were so adult that they were clearly no longer compos mentis.
The first term that we're learning together is compos mentis. Compos mentis. This is Latin. If someone is compos mentis, they can think clearly. They can make sound decisions. But Sam is making a comment and saying that some of the people in that room were no longer able to think clearly. We use this term humorously. So we use it to maybe crack a joke. He might be referring to Joe Biden, who some thought was senile, unable to think clearly and make important decisions. Compos mentis. And it goes with the verb to be. Someone is compos mentis or is not compos mentis. He says that some of the people in that room were no longer able to make sensible decisions. Maybe they were too old.
A little over adult.
Yeah.
And that was the line that the Europeans took, and many commentators in the United States took. It was also going to be a transformative presidency. You may remember this from people like
This is the viewpoint that they held. Maybe this was their approach. This is the line they took, to take a line. And sometimes we have expressions like a hardliner, and this is a person who has a very tough position. They don't want to change their minds. They're hardliners, especially in politics. We use that term. They are not moderate. To take a line, to take a line. That's the phrase that you want to learn.
Michael Beschloss, that was going to be up there with Roosevelt and Johnson. And all of this struck me at the time as completely absurd. And sure enough, my prediction 4 years ago that the Biden administration would be like the Carter administration, but with dementia, turned out to be about right. Because what happened was they made a big inflation mistake by throwing a ton of money at the economy, which you didn't really need to do because the pandemic was basically over. And
so they had forgotten about what had occurred, what had taken place in the past. It was kind of like the Carter administration with dementia. So he's using that term figuratively here.
They then did a series of things that completely antagonized the allies that were so happy to.
They did a series of things that antagonize the allies. We've had the word antagonize before, but it's a good word, so let me cover it again. This is to try to pick a fight with someone, try to argue with someone, to show that you are hostile towards them. You can also pronounce this word hostile, very unfriendly, antagonize, to antagonize someone. And another good word to learn here is antagonist. Antagonist. In biology, sometimes we use the opposite as well, and we say that a drug, for instance, is a dopamine agonist. It means that it activates dopamine receptors. So antagonist, agonist. And the verb was antagonize, to antagonize the allies, to pick a fight with the allies, try to upset them perhaps.
See them. They pulled the plug on the US and allied presence in Afghanistan without really telling any of the NATO partners what they were doing. They did it in the most chaotic way possible. That sent a signal that was picked up loud and clear in Moscow and Beijing. In 2021,
they pulled the plug. When you pull the plug on a project, you finish it, you terminate it. And in this case, they did it without letting their partners know. So this upset the allies.
Wholly failed to deter Putin from preparing an invasion, even when Putin signaled what he was going to do in July of that year, publishing an article on the historic unity of the Russian and Ukrainian peoples, which was a declaration of intent to do Anschluss.
Okay, the next word is actually a German word, Anschluss. What does it mean? Anschluss is kind of like a union, a connection. And historically speaking, this refers to the annexation of Austria by the Nazi Germany. So, what is he talking about? He says that Putin had published this article in which he openly expressed that he wanted to annex Ukraine or parts of Ukraine to do Anschluss. And if you want to look at the spelling, it will be in the description. But let's go back and hear it because this is a word that is very rarely used in the English language, at least everyday conversation. We don't use it, and it takes a little bit of insight to understand it properly.
Signaled what he was going to do in July of that year, publishing an article on the historic unity of the Russian and Ukrainian peoples, which was a declaration of intent to do Anschluss. And they proceeded to do exactly the same in the following 2 years with respect to the Middle East, which they thought they'd somehow pacified on the very eve of the October 7th, 2023 massacre. So the Biden administration, which I think broadly agreed with your terms of reference, allies matter, all that kind of stuff, were a disaster. It was a succession of failures of deterrence.
A succession of failure of deterrence. To deter someone from doing something is to discourage them, to do your best to stop something from happening. And a series of deterrence, a series of actions that intended to stop something bad from happening, to prevent a disaster failed. A succession of deterrence. Let's pronounce it together. Deterrent. Deterrent. Pay attention to the pronunciation of the first part. It's deterrence.
That produced two major wars that the United States seemed incapable of doing anything to stop. That's an important setting for Trump 2.0. The real failure of whatever was left of liberal internationalism, the Obama foreign policy in its Biden-Harris incarnation, did create
in its Biden-Harris incarnation. When we use this term, we talk about something that reappears. We had it in the past, and now it reappears in a different shape, in a different form. The Harris incarnation, it was the Obama's original policy or his approach, and it reappeared in a different shape or form, incarnation. Sometimes we use this word when we discuss religion. And some people believe that, for instance, when we die, we show up in a different life form. This is incarnation.
It's an opportunity for the new sheriff to say, you know what? The allies are weak and suck, and the bad guys are strong. We need to be careful. We certainly, I think this is, here I'm going to paraphrase what I think the Trump inner circle thinks. We do not want to be simultaneously in a fight with Russia, Iran, China, and North Korea. And I think that's interesting because there are some people inside the administration who think we should be. Here's the central rift that I see within this nascent administration.
A couple good words there. So he's going to talk about a rift. This is a gap. And we use this word to talk about a big disagreement. And sometimes amongst friends, a rift develops. This is where there is disagreement and people are no longer aligned. This is a rift. A rift is created. So also pay attention to the verb. And in this nascent administration, it is not a fully developed administration. It is developing. It has just emerged. This is a nascent administration. So let's pronounce it together, nascent. He's going to talk about a rift, that gap, that chasm that is developing in this new administration. It's a fledgling administration. It hasn't fully formed. Anyways, I hope you've learned at least one word with my video lesson. Check out the playlists that I've created with intellectuals, Dr. Sam Harris and Christopher Hitchens, my favorites. Thank you so much.